And as much as you say, period.
Good evening. I call the January 8th, 2024 regular business meeting of the Lee County Board of Education to order. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and the successes of the past year. We humbly ask for continued blessings during the new year. We especially thank you for all of our students and our employees. Grant us wisdom and discernment as we consider the matters before us. Help us to keep our students first in all of our decisions, and grant us humility as we seek to make prudent decisions for the school and the community. Amen.
Amen.
You have this evening's agenda before you. If there are no modifications, we can adopt our consent. And the vice chair will now review public participation protocol and guidelines for this evening's meeting.
The meetings of the Board of Education are held to conduct the affairs and business of the school system. Although these meetings are not meetings of the public is invited to attend all meetings, and members of the public are invited to address the board at appropriate times and in accordance with procedures established by the board or the superintendent. Thank you.
Next, Dr. True will provide this evening's welcome and student achievement recognition.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Thank you to everyone who has joined us this evening. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and a happy holiday season. Seems like the school year is just flying by. Tonight I look forward to sharing the findings from my listening, learning, and leading plan over the past 5 months that will lead our team to planning the next steps as a school community. Before I get started, I would love to invite Mr. Dowling to come up. We have an incredible student to celebrate this evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
That's upside down. Okay. Every month we try to do a little bit of recognition, and this month is no different. This is a very special student. Lacey Wheeler is here with us, along with her parents. She received the Mr. William C. Bill Baisley Something Big Scholarship from the Georgia Agribusiness Council Foundation. There were 3 total recipients of this scholarship in Georgia, and Lacey was the only high school student that earned the scholarship. The other 2 were college students. So the scholarship can be used at any agricultural program in the state of Georgia. Lacey plans to attend ABAC College, and she plans to use the scholarship to become a high school agriculture teacher. So we'll see you in a few years.
Yes.
Right back here in Lee County right now. I'm sure they have to have a media moment. So.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. 1, 2. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Business, the board needs to approve the minutes from the December 11th, 2023 regular business meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? This board, may I have a second? Okay. Are there any questions or corrections from the board? Being none, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. In the next item of business, the board needs to approve the month-end November 2023 financial statement Dr. Truitt, are there any comments regarding the financials that you wish to make?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I make the recommendation that the financial report be submitted, as submitted, be accepted for the month of November.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the November 2023 financials as presented? May I have a second? Are there any questions from the board regarding the financial statement? Being none, I have a motion and a second to approve the month-end November 2023 financial statement as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. This portion of the meeting is set aside for members of the public to address the board on any issues of concern. There were no requests to speak at tonight's meeting, and we'll move on. At this time, it is necessary for the board to adjourn into executive session to consider personnel matters. We will reconvene at the conclusion of this executive session. May I have a motion to discuss or deliberate upon the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action or dismissal, or periodic evaluation or rating of a public officer or an employee, or to interview applicants for the position of superintendent?
So,
Okay, second. Okay. Are there any questions? Being none, it's been motioned and seconded to adjourn into executive session. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. And we are currently adjourned. Yeah, that's, yeah. May I have a motion to reopen? Are there any questions or comments from the board? Being none, it's been motioned and seconded to reopen. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0, and the regular business meeting is called back to order. At this time, Dr. Truitt will present the superintendent's monthly reports.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. I am going to present my entry plan review this evening. So very excited. This represents 5 months of really good work, and just super excited to share those findings. The full actual report, I will do a brief overview this evening, but the full report can be found in the board documents. Okay. Beginning in August of this year, I began a journey to engage with our community to ensure that I had a clear understanding of all that Lee County has been and what we want to be moving forward. I've had the opportunity to speak with hundreds of members of this community and found that I have joined some of the most committed and a passionate group of professionals, and they have built a strong foundation around the value of public education and the needs of children. I'm honored to follow the legacy of past Lee County school superintendents to be able to lead this incredible team to write the next chapter. Tonight I will share an overview of the findings from my entry plan, the themes that were identified, and the strategic priorities that will be used to guide our work as we prepare for the 2024-25 school year. None of this would have been possible without your overwhelming support and willingness to share. Thank you, each of you, who have been willing to come early, stay late, or donate your time to share your thinking with me. Thank you for your commitment and honesty and true belief in the Lee County school system. I've received such a warm welcome and value the traditions of the past that have been shared, and I look forward to the future and the next chapter that we will write together. So this first slide represents in numbers the entry activities, and although it is not all of them, there were at least 20 school visits, 81 parents in focus groups, and you can see the other numbers on the screen. 78 classrooms visited, in all the different groups that I have met with and had the opportunity to speak with. That doesn't encompass all of the community meetings and other things that I've attended, but it has been definitely a very busy season and an incredible welcome. So what I'll present tonight is an overview of all of those things put together. The first part of the plan was to listen. And what I walked away with is some general insights that families believe in the value of the Lee County school system. That came through absolutely in these listening sessions. Families would love to have communication and information that is more accessible and a little bit easier to find. There was a desire to have more opportunities for students of all ages to have enrichment opportunities. It seems like those were concentrated, or the feeling was they were concentrated in high school. And families would like to see a balance of academics, fine arts, and athletics to be reflected in how and what we celebrate and how and what we fund. So in the area of additional opportunities, there was an ask for a balance between print and digital. We heard that from students, from families, that they were we had leaned a little bit towards digital, and to bring that back to a little bit more of a balance. Looking for a consistency of practice among teachers, among schools, an additional integration of STEM and coding, as well as an expansion of CTAE and career opportunities post-high school graduation. In teacher effectiveness and capacity, Lee County Schools has incredibly hardworking, passionate, and dedicated professionals in all job families that touch teaching and learning, from leadership to support positions. It is clear that an all hands on deck and all parties involved want success for students. There were key points of interest that were consistent in many of the conversations throughout the entry plan. There was an interest in focused and consistent professional learning, staying on one path, one thing, and doing it really, really well. There was a call to reduce duplication of work, Participation, a desire to participate in high-quality professional learning, and improvement in the consistent use of evidence-based, district or school resources. One of the things that was noted under instruction and learning was at this time we have an absence of clarity surrounding formative data. There was not a consistent set of data points that we use to hold all parties accountable to ensure success for each student. And so looking for some consistency there. Parent and student groups alike mentioned providing, and I talked about the STEM and the STEAM were mentioned, as well as basic computer science and coding. In addition, for acceleration, there was a significant conversation around supporting students in success no matter what level, providing opportunities both in support for remedial, but also for high-level course offerings to make those accessible. So if we have tutoring for one thing, we want to make sure we have tutoring for some of our higher-level courses as well. Under the Learn category, we looked at student achievement, and the idea was to ensure effective and efficient transition process while maintaining a focus on strategic initiatives in the area of growth and the next steps. There is an opportunity for organizational capacity and alignment to build relationships with Lee County School System's districts and school leaderships teams, as well as representatives from all certified and classified job families. Some of the key findings around student achievement: that Lee County Schools is a high-performing school district. Through extensive review of student data from the Georgia Milestones Assessment, FastBridge Universal Screening results, opportunities for growth have been identified. In most tested areas, overall Lee County Schools is performing above RESA and state averages. There is evidence of a notable gap in achievement for subgroups, and just in a few minutes you'll hear from Ms. Duke, and she's going to share our CCRPI data, and that comes through in that data as well. Learning engagement is an area that students and families indicate is an opportunity for growth. Children really deeply getting involved in their learning. Literacy requirements for Georgia. Although there has been substantial focus on literacy in general across the lower grade levels, the focus has not been specifically on early language development or explicit phonics. Professional learning has been limited to a small selection of teachers, and there is an opportunity to develop clarity around exactly how do we say we teach reading in Lee County Schools. There were some operational and organizational findings as well. Workforce. All job families are critical to the core business of student learning and are key to the success of this organization. We have a dedicated and passionate staff in Lee County Schools. There are some areas that remain unfilled on a consistent basis, and the main areas of custodial and food service utilize the staffing company to fill those gaps. This model needs to be examined for effectiveness, and we need to further explore additional options to ensure fully staffed teams. Our classified staff members feel valued at a high level. However, they feel that their compensation is not competitive, and that came through the listening sessions. Under the area of technology, at this time we have devices for each student in the district. However, the devices in most cases do not travel with the student. At this time, there is not a recorded method for replenishment and replacement of the technology infrastructure for the future. In other words, we have devices, but there isn't a plan for what do we do when those devices become aged out. There is an inconsistency for systems and processes. There is an inconsistency in systems and processes in some district or school operations. There might be a way of doing something or a process that has been used in the past, but many times the system is known only to a select few or to the user and is not codified or documented across the district. It doesn't give us a roadmap to plan. In the area of leading, key findings that emerged for the unified governance: this is an incredible school board and school board team. There is a strong foundation for an exemplary unified governance team and a desire of that team to be collaborative, productive, and visionary to best serve the children of Lee County. The school system leaders desire clear communication around local autonomy and system expectations. there is the opportunity for clear systems of communication for leaders, families, and community members. It's highly valued, and there's a desire for a continued model of two-way communication that values insight and advisory from all stakeholders. There was not a listening session that we held where someone did not thank me for the opportunity to provide insight and input into what we were doing as a school system, and that was incredible. There is an opportunity to increase predictable outcomes through policy and regulation by creating systems around the structures within the areas of teaching and learning, creating a direct line from student learning from the boardroom to the classroom. So I think we can go on to priorities, and they're brief up here, but essentially the priorities moving into SY25 to build on the incredible foundation that's already been laid. And I don't think this will be new or shocking to anyone who spent any time with me as we walk through this process. But we're really going to have a strong focus on all students reading on grade level. And in the actual document that you find online, it's consistent evidence of professional learning, use of evidence-based instructional resources, the implementation and monitoring of explicit phonics instruction, and communication of language progress to students and families. Under strengthening student learning, which would be in the area of instruction, the use of evidence-based instructional resources, consistent use of aligned learning engagement strategies, a clarity around a balance of print and digital and alignment of instruction to Georgia standards, and high expectations for all students that will be reflected through scheduling, outcomes, and opportunities. And then ensuring our performance using benchmark tools, national and state metrics. Ensure highly effective operational systems, specifically looking at the area of finance, building additional transparency around our budgeting process that will communicate through board meetings and other lines of communication, invest in competitive compensation for all job families, and budgeting and spending will be reflective of core values and strategic priorities. In the area of ensuring organizational effectiveness and communication and operations, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to tell our story, to ensure common and consistent messages, narratives, and branding, to build systems of communication and around student learning progress and gaps, and school system information, to make sure that our families know and understand how their student is doing and then what's going on in the district at large. Advance leadership capacity and pipelines at all levels, district, school, teacher, student, and families. Make sure that we are building a strong pipeline of leaders that will take the next steps in years to come. And explore systems of replenishment and replacement for transportation, technology, and maintenance operations. Madam Chair, members of the board, that concludes my findings. It has been an incredible 5 months, and the next steps, there's the team right here in the back and district leaders, as well as all of those advisories will move forward in planning the next steps and how we implement those things. Thank you. Oh, I thought I was done, but I'm not. So let's talk about construction. Lee County Primary renovation. We are almost done. The punch list is about 80% complete. The exterior punch list was worked on in 12/21. The civil punch list was performed and developed 1/2/24, and we are looking at having an official ribbon cutting and open house on January 24th at 9 a.m. So we are very, very excited and ready to put a bow on that project. Our current contingency balances, you'll see in your board documents. All remaining contingencies will be a credit back to the school system at the end of the project. We don't anticipate, I don't believe, any change orders moving forward, so those are set.
Except for the one today. There may be a little that.
There was an adjustment on the sign. Originally the sign was projected to have the address, but just the number on the sign. That maybe in drafting looked a little unusual when they started with the sign, and so we'll make an adjustment there, and the Lee logo will actually take the place of the address. Because it was just the number of the address and not the physical address, and it wasn't consistent, so we're gonna go ahead and address that by putting the logo there. Baseball and softball improvements. Baseball, the turf is complete with punch list items. We are looking at the scoreboard being moved within 2 weeks. Just a reminder that all of the construction projects are funded through SPOS funding primarily. That is not general funds, that's actually done through our SPOS. Softball, the turf will begin to be it was installed, the beginning of this turf installment happened at the end of December, and there's an anticipated completion by the middle of January. So very excited about the softball field. When you look at work orders, corrective work orders, we're at 82.76 completion in corrective work orders. In preventative maintenance work orders, we're at 100% completion, 174 received, 174 completed. Our SPOS collections for the month totaled $444,259.14, which is about consistent with what we've seen in the past. Under student health services, we are beginning the process of notifying parents, 7th graders and 11th graders, of the required vaccinations. We are hopeful to stay diligent with communication and looking for a high compliance for the 24-25 school year. We are beginning the process of hiring a new nurse as we have an opening at the high school. Just wanted to keep everyone in the loop for HR and HR timelines and contracts. We want to inform everyone of the timeline of the contracts and the process for the school year. A majority of contracts will be prepared for approval for the February board meeting. Proposed salary scales will be presented at the March board meeting, and additional contracts may be presented in months of March, April, and the final contracts will be presented at the May board meeting. Madam Chair and members of the board, I invite Mr. Kevin Dowling to come forward to share the safety and discipline report for the month of January. Mr. Dowling.
Good evening once again. We're going to talk a little bit about some safety and discipline. Really, we're going to talk more about safety this time. When we did the report back in December, we covered some of the discipline issues, but we were only in school about another week or so since then, so felt like it would be kind of the same numbers almost coming out. So we're going to talk a little bit about safety this time. So Jen, go ahead. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about, the vape detector install, a little bit of an adjustment there. The install is still in progress. We had hoped, and what I said last month, which I guess was last December, but what I said there was that we expected it to be done by the time we started back in January. That didn't happen. The first, when they got to installing the detectors, one of the people who were installing got sick, and so they've kind of backed up a little bit. So should be finished by the end of January. But just to let you know some interesting little tidbit here. So we began the installation on December 18th, and the first violator was caught on December 19th. I mean, literally one day after installing the vape detectors, it was kind of like, I guess kind of like Gary would say, fishing in a pond full of fish when they were biting, because as soon as we got one in there, they were caught. And the consequences, it went from the vape detector going off, administrator checking it, administrator finding the person, and pretty much, I mean, that was all done. It was very efficient, very well done. It's not something we necessarily, we're not sitting here going to celebrate over it back in time again. It just shows the effectiveness of it. The vape detectors are meant to be a deterrent. We don't need vaping in our schools, and I'll continue to do what's necessary to limit and disallow their usage. So ultimately, again, our goal is to keep kids safe, and this is one way that we're going to try to do it. Again, it's another deterrent, so that maybe if we get vape detectors and the kids start to see that we have them across in all the bathrooms, that's one more place where they can't do that sort of thing. All right, moving on. Code of conduct revisions. I want to talk a little bit about that. We just started the process of revising our code of conduct. And actually what we're going to do is revise our code of conduct. Instead of having one pre-K through 12 code of conduct, to actually have two. One that does pre-K through 5. I actually have K through 5. I meant to change that, didn't do it. But one that does pre-K through 5 and one that does 6 through 12. We think that this will allow some better clarity around what kind of infractions and consequences. There might be some different at the lower level than there is at the upper level. Obviously also the upper level has tribunal hearings, the lower level tends not to have tribunal hearings. But that should allow us for a better fit with information and consequences that are a little bit better suited for each one of their levels. Wanted to also just, oh yeah, the timeline. Talk about the timeline. So you can't see it real well here, but so in December we established the team. We held our initial meeting. In January, what we're going to do this month, we're going to meet again later this month, and we're going to go ahead and start the split. So we're going to, start splitting the P5 and 6 through 12 codes. And one thing that we're going to do at the upper level is kind of reorganize our levels and adjust, and also add a level 4. We have 3 levels of discipline. First level is kind of the lowest level, kind of just the aggravating things. The second level is a little bit more serious. Third level is pretty serious. And when we add this 4th level, that 4th level will be, well, this is a tribunal level offense. So we're going to do that in the 6 through 12 one. In February, we're going to compose a draft of that, and we'll also request feedback from our principals, our staff, our students, and our parents. And then we'll revise it as necessary after that feedback. In March, our plan is to introduce it to board members and have, much like we did with the calendar, a 30-day public review. And then once we have that 30-day review, make adjustments again as necessary after feedback. And then in April, we'll seek BOE approval. And then in May, after all that's done, we'll do a final review with our leaders and kind of go from there with both codes of conduct. So, we have codes of conduct, hoping that we never have to use the consequences inside. But if we need to do so, it needs to be clear, it needs to be concise, and it needs to be easy to understand. And, at the different levels, if a kindergartner bites their classmate, that happens. I mean, primary principles, it happens, right? But if a 12th grader bites their classmates, that's a little different. Maybe not so common, but also a little bit more serious of an issue. So, but that's my presentation on the safety and discipline for this month. And
I think what you'll find is the focus right now is ensuring that teachers can teach and students can learn in the classroom, and that is our focus in this revision, is really reviewing that and having high expectations around behavior in the classroom in Lee County Schools. So, thank you to those who are here that will serve on that team, so good bit.
When you say board approval, we don't currently approve that code of conduct, do we?
we haven't. We've kind of put it together as a I think of it as a procedure. But I think that, and Dr. Trua could probably say this better than I could, I think that we really want to, when we make these changes and when we split this, we really want to give everybody a piece of it, let everybody kind of get their eyes on it, get their, see what's inside of it, and really kind of read through it. And after doing that, once we get a whole, like we did with the calendar, you get a whole community feedback, and you'll hear a little bit again in the calendar about the calendar. We had 95 emails concerning the calendar, and we'll get to that in a minute. But if you get a lot of eyes and ears on this thing, mainly eyes, and then we come back, I think at that point, maybe it is something that's appropriate for the board to approve.
If we approve it, it becomes policy, correct?
If you adopt it.
If we adopt it.
Yeah, you adopt it.
Policy is not negotiable, it's as worded in everything, correct?
Right.
So the reason it's a procedure is there's some gray area, is what I've been told. Now we're gonna put it a policy where there is no gray. Is that what we're gonna do?
So we are gonna put a code of conduct in place that when you say there's no gray area, the code of conduct will be followed once it's adopted by the board. It will be, they are looking at putting ranges of consequences. So, but that's gonna be a little bit more delineated and a little bit more aligned. So by pulling your upper level immediate tribunal things out of a tier 3 offense, that allows tier 3 to have more clarity, that allows tier 4 to have more clarity. So I think the scope of what we're hoping to walk away from, and a lot of this came out of listening sessions, is as a parent, when I go and I know that my lovely little cherub has done something and I look it up, I can see that range of consequences. There does have to be some circumstances impact the outcome of an offense. And so we want to make sure that we don't remove the ability of our school leadership to look at the whole picture, the whole child, and the whole situation. But right now, the consequences range from ISS or a conference all the way to alternative school. So we want to make that, the range is going to be smaller, if that makes sense. So if there is a physical altercation, that range is going to be smaller, you're going to, but where you want, a little bit more like bus discipline. And I know that we looked at bus discipline specifically, and you'll see where it says first offense, this is what occurs, second offense, you're gonna see that within some of those. And so what we've charged the team, and what I've charged the team with, is coming up with a draft, making sure that there's a wide span of input from school leadership, district leadership, families in this community. Because I think school discipline is really a community issue. We want to make sure that everyone has some insight and some input into that process.
My concern is we don't lose sense of a little common sense, meaning, I'm still gonna fall back on it because I think it's horrible that a kid was expelled from the school system for having a steak knife in the back of his truck during the time your policy said no weapons. And it was from a Boy Scout camping trip. Now that boy still doesn't have a high school degree.
So that is one thing that you're gonna see, is there will be the ability, and I think we've talked about this, at each level for administrative discretion.
Yep.
And so that, you're talking exactly about what I was just referring to. There are circumstances around a situation that we wanna make sure. But now on the flip side of that, if someone brought a steak knife in their backpack and they were threatening people with it, we wanna make sure that can be handled differently.
I think that will always be there, that ability of the administrator to make a discernment as to, was this a threat, was this not a threat, how, where do we need to go with this?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I invite Kelly Duke to share with us the CCRPI results for SY 24. Mrs. Duke, actually 23. I got ahead of myself.
Good evening, board members. I'm pleased to have a few minutes tonight to share the 23 CCRPI results for our district with you all. As you will see, as we're going through this information, we have lots to be excited about in Lee County. Remember when we're sharing this that no longer do we receive an overall CCRPI score, so I'm sharing the district results for each of the 5 CCRPI components. First area is the area of content mastery, and content mastery component of CCRPI is based on the weighted student performance on the Georgia Milestones Assessment. As you can see from the chart, the district content mastery score was more than 10 points above the state score at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school. In fact, every school in our system scored above the state content mastery score for their level. While we certainly will work to continue to improve our milestone scores in all subject areas, the content mastery component of CCRPI is a strength for Lee County. The second component is the readiness component, and that particular component of CCRPI is based on student attendance, literacy rates, and various beyond the core indicators for each level. Lee County's readiness score was also above the state score at all 3 levels, as were each of the schools in our district. We plan to begin targeted and focused efforts next year to improve the percentage of students reading on or above grade level across the district. This work will help us continue to improve our overall readiness component score at all 3 levels. The progress component of CCRPI is based on the level of growth that students exhibit in the areas of ELA and math from one year to the next on the Georgia Milestones Assessment. The growth of English learners towards English proficiency is also a factor in this component. The EL student growth only counted for us at the elementary level, though, because the middle and high school students middle and high schools did not have enough students in that category to count. As you can see from the chart, Lee County is again above the state score at all 3 levels. While our overall progress scores are above the state, an area of focus will be to move our students who are showing minimal to no growth to a higher level. In the area of closing gaps, this measures whether or not the achievement rates on the Georgia Milestones Assessment are improving by at least 3% from one year to the next for all student groups. The standard is for the achievement level for each student group to continue to improve in every tested subject until a 90% achievement rate is reached. Lee County did exceptionally well at the middle school level in the area of closing gaps, as the district score at the middle level outperformed the state by 44.2 points. Overall, the closing gaps component is an opportunity for growth for our district. While there was evidence of improvement among many of our student groups across the system, it was not significant enough to meet the 3% improvement target in some areas. Graduation rate is the last component, and the graduation rate component for CCRPI purposes is based on both the 4 and 5 year graduation rates. In terms of the 4-year graduation rate, Lee County outperformed the state by 7 percentage points. Both the 4 and 5 year rates are used to determine the overall score for CCRPI purposes of 92.1 for Lee County. This is also 7 points above the state component. Overall, we are very pleased with our CCRPI results, but have already begun identifying areas for growth to guide our continual improvement efforts. Thank you, Dr. Truitt. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes what we have prepared and are available for questions.
I've got one, but I don't know how to ask it.
Okay.
And I don't wanna sound like negative when I ask it, but like, so when we look at this closing gaps data, I've been on here 5 years, this is the first time I've seen bad data, or something not bad, but data that wasn't a part of state. Has that always been the case, or now is it that y'all dug down into specific subgroups and find there was always a problem? Or has there always been a problem, or we just now finding there?
In the closing gaps,
Yeah, I mean, we're
component
30% below
specifically,
average, you're correct.
I did not pull exactly how that compares to previous years for that, but remember that component is based on whether or not those subgroups are meeting 3% improvement targets. So they could still be making improvements, but not meeting that particular
Okay,
target.
all right.
So,
It's really consistent with what I shared earlier.
You know, I remember, I mean, we talked about it, I just didn't know if that's, because this is really the first time to me that we've seen anything
yeah,
like
it
that.
hasn't been presented in this way before, so.
Okay.
We've
Yeah.
talked about it in general terms, and it's always,
Yeah.
we thought it was gonna be difficult, particularly when we got to looking at this, when we were changing over to that strategic waiver system.
Right.
That was one thing that was brought up that we needed to look at, that was gonna be probably one of our hardest targets to hit.
I think we are poised for improvement in this area
Oh,
and
yeah.
look forward to that moving forward. So,
No doubt.
but just want to make sure that, and thank you for bringing that up, and it's definitely a point, but I just really want to celebrate in this moment. We have an incredible group of leaders and teachers and students, and just some incredible performance, but we definitely have room for growth, and I think everybody's excited for that.
Yeah, I didn't want it to sound negative, I was just,
No,
I'm
that's
asking,
fine.
I didn't know what.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, I invite Dr. Brooks Denbridge to share our current planning around meeting early literacy requirements for the state of Georgia. Dr. Denbridge.
Good evening, everyone. When I last presented, I shared with you the next steps for literacy in Georgia and Lee County. In that presentation, I shared that part of House Bill 538, also known as the Early Georgia Literacy Act, required that teachers in kindergarten through 3rd grade be trained on the science of reading, structured literacy, and foundational literacy skills. We have thoroughly reviewed learning options that are approved by the state, and through this review, we agree that letters is the most beneficial way to make sure that our teachers have the knowledge and content they need to provide the optimal reading instruction for our students. That includes a strong focus on explicit phonics instruction. I would like for you to know that we have had several teachers who are currently enrolled in letters and report that they are learning much and are implementing the strategies with their students and already seeing positive results. Teachers who are not in letters, but who have spoken with teachers inside and outside of our district, have asked me when they can enroll in letters. And just this morning, I read State Superintendent Wood's announcement about a statewide literacy coaching model. In this announcement, Superintendent Wood stated, with aligned and direct training, guidance, and support, we are poised to move the literacy needle. It should ensure the delivery of proven, nationally recognized science of reading training, trainings like letters, or the Ames Institute. The state of Georgia offers a free professional learning video series in the event that districts do not have the resources to provide this learning for teachers. However, it is not nearly as comprehensive as letters. Over a 2-year span, letters provides teachers with a combination of in-person learning, online learning, readings, and application activities to use in the classroom. This 2-year learning journey for teachers is in-depth and focused on successfully increasing teachers' knowledge and application of explicit instruction in the areas of phonics, vocabulary, reading comprehension, and writing. We are so excited that the calendar that we are recommending with Professional Learning Days included allows for 80 teachers to receive this training experience without having been pulled from the classroom. So there'll be no need for hiring substitute teachers, which would have incurred a great expense to the district. Because the state of Georgia recognizes the value of having state personnel trained to be facilitators of letters, they have had facilitators trained across the state. Now, we've had a little bit of news today, but we were under the impression that we could utilize a state-trained letters facilitator at no cost. While this is not the case, we are still able to provide letters at a minimal cost to the district, which is an estimated savings of about $70,000. So that's pretty huge anyway. Board members, you have in your packets an amended cost analysis sheet. As you can see, we can still provide this opportunity for our teachers without using general funds. Later tonight, we will propose for your approval of use of federal funds to be used to begin this incredible investment with teachers and students of Lee County. The analysis lays out a plan to begin with 4 days of training for 80 teachers over the summer in June. Teachers will be off contract at this time, so we offer a stipend of $150 for their time. This stipend can be paid using Title II funds. The remainder of the expenses, online course licenses, materials, and a facilitator's daily rate can be purchased with our remaining ESSER funds. That's all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
I do. Please tell me why we chose this particular program, letters.
Okay. So most of the school districts in the state have already been using letters and training their teachers, and they're seeing results right away. There are just every district in our RESA has already had letters training with their teachers. The facilitator that I've mentioned, she has shared the data from our Southwest RESA after just a half a year of being in letters training, and the growth of the kindergarten students has been phenomenal as compared to years prior. And I think this is why the superintendent addressed that in his address. And this is the approach that Mississippi took. I don't know if you've heard of the Mississippi Miracle, where they went from being at the bottom of nationally ranked schools or state reading levels to being among the highest.
And they were using the letters program?
They were using a
Mississippi Minute.
very intense overtime training similar to, they haven't, it's not a state training, but the coaching model with the intensive training.
The other thing, Mrs. Ford, is we invited the primary leadership as well as the elementary leadership to sit down with district leaders and discuss what they wanted to do. And this was their recommendation as well. They had heard such positive feedback for participants in this training, either coming to us from other districts or currently participating now as one of the, I think this year we were allowed to have 4 involved in the RESA training, and we really want to make sure if it's the top quality, if it's the very best training, then rather than just do 4 teachers, we want to do all of our teachers. And so that's why the request, and having the opportunity to utilize carryover funds through former ESSER funds, then it allows us to do this rather than wait and then, or rather than use the completely online. We just didn't feel that that was the best fit for our early learning teachers, those core teachers. And so that's why the ask to do everybody at one time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I believe that's it. And we'll move on forward to discussion and action items. In the first of 6 action items, the board is asked to approve the personnel consent agenda. Dr. Truitt, would you like to comment on this evening's personnel consent agenda?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I recommend that the personnel agenda as discussed in executive session be accepted as presented.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the current personnel consent agenda as presented? May I have a second? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board regarding the personnel consent agenda? Being none, I have a motion and a second to approve the current personnel consent agenda as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously 4-0. Dr. Truitt, I believe you would like to.
I would like to thank Ms. Danielle Whitaker for accepting the challenge of serving as in a temporary position as an interim assistant principal at Twin Oaks Elementary for the spring of 2024. I don't think she is here this evening, but just when you see her, issue her a thank you and a warm welcome. Also, thank you to Dr. Hancock for the flexibility in supporting that decision as well. Thank you.
Okay. In the second action item, the board is asked to approve this evening's regular consent agenda. Dr. Truitt, would you like to comment?
Madam Chair and members of the board, you have been presented with a consent agenda containing fundraisers, facility requests, and field trip requests. I recommend that the consent agenda be approved.
May I have a motion to approve the current consent agenda as presented? Okay, may I have a second? Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay. Being none, I have a motion and a second to approve the current consent agenda as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. In the third action item, the board is asked to approve school calendars for the 2024 and 2025, as well as the 2025-2026 calendar years. Dr. Truitt, would you like to present the calendars?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I invite Mr. Dowling to present an overview of the feedback, findings, and final recommendations for the school year 25 and school year 26 for approval.
Good evening one more time. Actually, just a little bit of an update from the memo. I sent a memo to Dr. Truitt last week, and actually, when I sent it, we had one more day left of feedback, and we had a few more emails that last day, so I actually updated, and I'll kind of talk about that in just a moment. We had 95 total emails that were feedback for the calendar. Now, several of these were they just voted, I like calendar A for 24-25, and calendar A for 20. And I like calendar B, or I like a mix of A and B, you know. Now, but many of them, matter of fact, 56 of them had actual input. I like the fact that you're doing this. I don't like the fact that you're doing this. I'd rather you do that. So that was great. We got a chance to look through those, and make some adjustments based on those. 31 of the 95 emails were from people other than district employees. I know some were parents, I know some were community members that maybe used to be parents but aren't anymore. So we had a pretty good mix of who gave us feedback. It was about a 2-to-1 ratio of employees to other stakeholders, which is probably about normal. The feedback was, obviously when you're dealing with folks that are living all over the county with all sorts of different likes and dislikes, the feedback was mixed. We had some folks that loved coming to school earlier and getting a week off in October. We had some folks that hated coming to school earlier and getting a week off in October. We had some folks that loved getting breaks here and there. We had some folks that really wanted something else, but based on that feedback, we made some adjustments. And the adjustments you'll see on the calendars. Calendars will both, they give you 180 school days. 2 of those days are what we call flexible learning days. And flexible learning days are basically days where there will be work assigned for students. Students will have a chance to work on those assignments from home. That might be a Google Classroom thing. It might be a handout. It might be something like that and it gives the teachers an opportunity to do some professional learning in school on those days. So those days, and there's 2 of those days, I believe. What that gives us is an opportunity to have 180 learning days, but also kind of have 12 teacher professional work or professional learning or working days, which is more than the 10 that would normally be on there. So it gave us a little bit of flexibility there to help, especially with new standards, letters, training, things like that. It is a tight fit, just like any calendar that you try to put together. That everybody wants to start by a certain date and end at a certain date, and sometimes that's difficult to do. But we did, I think, the best that we could do in trying to fit everything in. It does have some things that people really love to have. It has a full week of Thanksgiving. It has 3 weekends at Christmas. That's, believe it or not, that's a big deal. 3 weekends at Christmas is a big deal to folks. So, but it also has the regular holidays that we have. But I submit that to you, and Dr. Chewy, I recommend that for approval if you would like to do so yourself.
Thank you. That concludes our presentation and our final recommendation for school calendars.
May I have a motion to approve the school calendars as presented? May I have a second? Are there any further questions or comments from the boards regarding the calendars?
You spent a lot of time on this, I can tell. I happened to mention to somebody we kind of have a rainbow, of colors on our calendar.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the time you spent.
Well, that's Ms. Robinson. Actually, she did a lot of she took what I normally did, and she said, I'm gonna spruce this up a little bit. Okay, go for it. So she did a great job. Our calendar advisory committee did a great job. I mean, just a lot of good input from a lot of folks. So.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Being none, I have a motion and a second to approve the current calendars as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. And the 4th action item, the board is asked to approve the retention bonus announced by Governor Kemp in December 2023. Dr. Trill, would you like to explain the announced
Yes.
bonus?
Madam Chair, members of the board, you've been presented with a request for $250,000 in order to expand the one-time retention bonus issued by the governor. We received funding at the end of December for the state-funded school system positions. Lee County Schools has approximately 200 positions that are locally funded. These positions are primarily paraprofessionals, food service and grounds, and maintenance positions. And we know that you as a board are committed to all school employees, and we would like to expand the $1,000 bonus to provide this as a benefit for all benefit eligible positions. This one-time retention supplement will be included in eligible employees' January paycheck.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the retention bonus as presented? May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Now, did this mean, like, ground crew?
Everyone who is a benefit eligible position, including part-time, will be included in this.
Any further questions? Being none, I have a motion and a second to approve the retention bonus as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. In the fifth action item, the board is asked to approve the purchase of a professional learning course package for early literacy training. Dr. True, do you have anything further regarding this package?
Madam Chair, members of the board, you've been presented with a request for an investment of $63,840 to provide professional learning in the area of early language development to best teach reading and to meet the requirements of House Bill 158. I recommend that the expenditure utilizing federal funds be approved.
May I have a motion to approve the purchase of the professional learning package as presented? Support. May I have a second? Are there any questions or comments from the board? Being none, I have a motion and a second to approve the purchase of the professional learning package as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. And in the sixth and final action item, the board is asked to approve revised policies, JVC, school admissions, and JGCD medication. Dr. True, would you like to discuss these?
Madam Chair, members of the board, last month 2 policies were presented for public review. There has been a slight revision to the first, JVC. It adds the definition to the term of full-time employee for the status of enrollment of employee children. The clarification of this definition would include the children of our school resource officers. In addition, a sentence has been added around providing those electing school choice providing their own transportation. The second policy for revision is JGCD, medication. This revision includes parental permission and supply of any medicine, as well as changes to self-carry processes in grades 6 through 12. We have received no public comment with the exception of the addition around transportation, and recommend that these policy revisions for final approval.
May I have a motion to approve revised policies, JVC school admissions and JGCD medication as presented? Okay. May I have a second? Are there any further questions or comments from the board regarding these policies? Being none, I have a motion and a second to approve the revised policies as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank everyone for attending this evening's meeting and hope you have a happy and safe new year. If there's no further meeting, this meeting is adjourned. Excuse me, if there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned.